Welcome, everyone, to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, where we bring you powerful conversations that inspire, educate, and empower. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects countless individuals, but is too often hidden in silence: narcissistic abuse, legal abuse, toxic relationships, high conflict divorces, custody dramas, and a difficult path to reclaiming your life. My guest is someone who not only lived this reality, but transformed it into a mission to help others break free and stay free. Lisa Johnson is the co founder of BTGO, Been There, Got Out, where she serves as a high conflict divorce coach and certified domestic violence advocate, and is the author of the critically acclaimed book, Been There, Got Out, a powerful blend of her personal story, professional guidance, and practical tools for navigating the complexities of high conflict relationships. Through her work as a certified domestic violence expert, educator, and co founder of a thriving support platform, Lisa has become a trusted voice for survivors seeking clarity, strength, and a way forward. In her book and through her advocacy, Lisa offers a lifeline to those feeling trapped, reminding them that escape is possible and that healing, empowerment, and rebuilding are within reach. Now, today we will explore her journey, the lessons behind the book, and the strategies she shares to help others recognize the signs, protect themselves, and ultimately take their lives back. Welcome, Lisa, to the podcast. We're so glad to have you on the podcast, whereby we can hopefully help some people going through this or reach some people who know people dealing with this issue.
Yeah, wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much, Ron.
You're more than welcome.
My pleasure.
Now, briefly introduce yourself to our audience and tell us your background and how you entered the arena of serving as a certified domestic violence advocate and high conflict divorce coach.
Okay, well, I often think that it's definitely not the career that I dreamt of as a child, but I was with my ex for 20 years, married for almost 18, never, ever, ever saw divorce in my future, and a while ago, it became more painful to stay than to leave when I discovered that he was basically living a double life the entire relationship. And so I took about 2 years to plan my exit. Finally met with a divorce attorney, and within about 20 minutes, the attorney said, "Yours is gonna be one of the really bad ones," which was astonishing because I truly believed that everything was gonna be amicable at that point, that my ex had been a good person who had done some bad things, and my lawyer was right. It ended up costing 10 times the amount of the $10,000 that I already thought I couldn't afford, and it
Right.
took a full year to get out of that relationship, and the number 10 seems to be my number because then it took about 10 years total in the legal system, which was also predicted by my attorney, who said at the very end of that first year, basically that this was just part 1, and that my ex would not follow the agreement that we had made, and that if I continued to use him as an attorney, that my ex would continue to financially decimate me in the legal system. So the only real option was for me to represent myself or go pro se. And so that's what I did. And I took about a year and 9 months after the divorce to put together a really strong case, went back to court and realized that I had a bigger case than I thought. It was actually 3 different cases instead of just 1, and began my journey as a self-represented litigant. Took about 7.5 years and about 100 court appearances in 2 states, and I always say that it was absolute torture, but justice and karma finally were served beautifully, and also in the process, my ex appealed 4 times, and I argued at the higher court level myself, and not only did I win, but the case was so notable that it was published in the Connecticut Law Journal, so it became case law for the state, which is a huge honor for an attorney, and it's unheard of. Every lawyer has told me they don't know anybody who has represented themselves and had it turn into case law. So I always say I'm very proud of that, and then I also gave live testimony, which helped pass something called Jennifer's Law. And so my state of Connecticut became the third in America to expand our legal definition of domestic violence to include something called coercive control. So all of that invisible abuse that didn't used to be taken as seriously is now taken a lot more seriously, especially when it comes to restraining orders and custody situations. So most people think that domestic violence is physical.
Right.
I thought so too. You have this image of a battered woman,
Yeah.
but it's so much broader than that. There's emotional, psychological abuse, verbal, financial abuse is present in 99% of domestic violence cases, legal abuse, which is my life story, stalking, isolation, digital abuse, something called revenge porn, which means that somebody's keeping you in the relationship because they say if you leave them, they're threatening to post sexual images of you, which could not only ruin your own reputation, but affect your family. So there's all kinds of, again, that invisible abuse that is now taken much more seriously and considered when looking at the bigger picture.
Did you have any legal education before this happened?
No, so I was a high school English teacher. I was an English major, and my dad and uncle happen to be patent attorneys. They're identical twins. They don't
Oh,
litigate, they know nothing about family law, but I like to say my dad speaks legalese. So as I was on my pro se journey representing myself, my dad was in the background. I would write these speeches and read things to him and have him check things for me and make sure that things were filed properly. And we always advise our clients who we work with now to have some kind of lawyer or some legal advice in the background to make sure that you at least follow proper procedure because you don't want things to get thrown out on a technicality. And now a lot of people are using AI, which can be helpful, but it is definitely not a substitute for real legal advice.
I'm just wondering, I have a question. When you were doing pro se, in other words, you were your own attorney,
Mhm.
obviously to save money, because I don't know what lawyers get an hour anymore. I heard some
Around
thousand
here
dollars. Yeah,
around here, it's $800 to
that's what I
$1,200.
heard. Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I heard. I mean,
and
it's crazy.
yeah.
Did the judge who heard the case, and I assume you just went to one judge, right?
No. Yeah.
No, it was many judges, right?
Many multiple judges because it was in 2 states, and judges usually rotate every couple of years in family
Okay,
court.
okay.
So, yes, there were multiple judges, and I had to keep
So
catching up.
do you feel you got adequate treatment, fair treatment? I because I heard that some of these judges have big egos, and here you are, you're not a lawyer, and you're up there espousing things. How did they treat you?
I mean, it was interesting because there were a number of different judges, and I don't know what it would have been. Well, actually, I do know because I did have some attorneys for parts of the case that I would ask to do what's called limited scope. Like when I changed part of the case to New York, everybody said, you need just get an attorney to wrap it up for you. And that was a huge waste of money and time. And they ended up messing up the case even more. So I went back to just representing myself. So the justice system.
If you are enjoying listening to or viewing the podcast, we would appreciate you spreading the word by sharing the podcast to your family and friends. Please visit the podcast website, itsarapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored, and a link to subscribe to the podcast email list, as well as products and services offered by our sponsors.
Overall is very slow and very frustrating for someone who's dealing with a high conflict X in the legal system. So even if you have an attorney, there's no guarantee that things are going to be done swiftly or efficiently or effectively. And I think that's a misconception is that we assume, okay, my case is languishing, it's taking forever, so I'm going to hire some really aggressive attorney and that can often make things worse. So in terms of the treatment I got at the time, it felt really unfair because I thought, this is ridiculous. I mean, when I went on my own, we already had an agreement. So we had orders, which is basically the law.
Yeah.
So if somebody's not obeying the law and they're found in contempt 5 times, you would think that there would be punishment. You would think that the court would come down hard on someone who did that, but in my experience and in the experience of hundreds of our clients, men and women around the world, courts tend to bend over backwards for people who take advantage of the system, and I think a lot of it has to do with fear of an appeal. So they wanna make sure that they've covered their butts in terms of, like, "I gave you this many chances,"
Yeah.
instead of just being quick to make a decision. Generally, family court wants you to take things out of the courtroom and negotiate on your own. They are really busy, overburdened, and the goal is take care of it yourself. You'll have more power, you'll have more customization of your parenting plan or whatever it is you're trying to do, and it doesn't take time from away from other people's cases. So they keep pushing you to do stuff yourself. But again, an agreement, by the way, is also stronger, in my opinion, than a court order, because if a judge gives a court order, then it can be appealed. But if you come to an agreement, you both decided it. So how are you going to appeal something that you yourself said I'm willing to do?
Right.
So that's something that people don't always realize. So judges do, and they say, do it yourself
Yeah.
if you can.
Now, many survivors of domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships, and high conflict divorces who are suffering are dealing with situations that are deeply emotional and often misunderstood. How did you approach writing these painful experiences in a way that felt both honest and empowering?
So are you talking about writing for court or writing the book?
The book.
Oh, the book. Okay. So the book really is not about my story or my partner Chris's story so much. We just briefly talk about it. But there's been a lot of emotional detachment from it. It didn't really affect me. The book really is based a lot, and this is just the first book. We have another book coming out very soon on a different topic,
Oh,
but still baked into what we do. But the book is really practical, actionable advice that we've learned from interviewing hundreds of professionals who work in the trenches every single day: lawyers, coaches, trauma experts, judges, mental health professionals. So it's really a conglomeration of their advice as someone moves through the legal process and after, especially in terms of a co-parenting relationship. So I didn't feel any kind of emotional, I don't know. It didn't stir up painful memories for me. And also, I've been a writer since I was a child. Like, I've kept journals since I was
okay.
a really little girl, and so I'm very comfortable with writing, but I felt like for the book, my personal experience, it's fine, but what people are really gonna learn from is advice from professionals who can tell them how to handle things legally, what to expect. I mean, the man
Okay.
that wrote the foreword to our book is an attorney in Canada named David Morneau, and he was a litigator for many years. He calls himself the recovering litigator. Now he does a lot with trying to keep people out of court, and that's what we do as well. So he was just fabulous in terms of when we did interviews together. We actually did live programs together when the book came out, and he's just a wealth of information, especially from a lawyer who really had his eyes opened by the families that were affected by some of the decisions that judges made, where in the beginning he was just thinking, I got to win for my client, and then some of the consequences weren't necessarily what he hoped for longer term.
Well, I read the book, been there, got out, found it very fascinating. So, what inspired you to write it, and what moment made you decide it was time to share your story publicly?
So I actually did a book, Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances is really my second book. I did a book about 20 years before that. It was called Rite of Passage: Tales of Backpacking Around Europe. And it had a totally different topic, travel, but it did really, really well. Like, the first printing of 10,000 sold out in 2 weeks. So I thought, ooh, I'm going to write about this, because as I was going through it, I thought this is so crazy that I think what I've learned along the way could help other people. Plus, my partner, Chris, went through his own situation, and I love that we have both the male and female perspective on domestic violence. And so we started putting the book together when we first started doing Been There, Got Out, maybe back in 2018. And then we put it aside for a little while. And then actually, we put it aside, then we pitched it, and an agent gave us some really helpful advice. He said, this book is great. It's a great idea, but your audience needs you. They're not going to read a book. They need help. They're desperate. So you really should consider doing some kind of courses. And then COVID hit. And so it actually was a blessing for us because everybody learned how to use Zoom, and
Yeah.
my educational background became accessible to the world rather than just teaching at a local school. And so that's where we really exploded. We had, again, the book had been on the back burner because we were coaching and doing things with that. And then I was interviewing a woman who had written a book called Single Mama Side Hustle, about her experience after divorce, coming up with different ways that she could earn money and getting herself financially back on her feet. And the publisher was listening to the interview and reached out and said, "Have you thought about writing a book?" And I said, "Well, we did, but now we're really busy with this other stuff." And she said, "I really, really think that you should do it." So I'm a New Yorker, she's a New Yorker, and Chris is a New Yorker. And she's one of those tiny people with a huge personality who
Yeah.
talks really fast. And I said, "Patrice, I'll give you an hour. If you can convince me, then we'll do it." And of course, she convinced us. And then that book came out in 2023. And now we have another book coming out with the same publisher. It's called Been There, Got Out, When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. And
Oh, that's gonna be a good that's a good
yeah,
book.
we're really
Yeah.
excited also because there's a lawyer. He's a former social worker turned lawyer, author, and he's the founder of something called the High Conflict Institute. And his name is Bill Eddy. He's internationally respected. And I could not believe that he said yes and wrote the foreword to our book. I couldn't believe that he let me interview him because he's so famous. And then he wrote the foreword to the book, and just we found out just last week that we're all going to be in London at the same time for a conference where he's the keynote speaker, and it's the day after the book is released.
Oh,
So
wow.
I cannot wait to do some
Yeah, we're
photo
gonna
ops
have to have
together
you
and book
back on
fair.
that. We're gonna have to have
Yeah.
you back on that. Now you developed a program to help others navigate abusive relationships and legal battles. What gaps did you see in existing support systems that led you to create this? Well, what are the gaps out there?
Okay, so one of the things that we see that tends to be a huge problem is people are doom scrolling social media. There's a lot of accounts on social media that highlight the terrible things that happen in family court, and people who are desperate read these things, throw money at these accounts that are selling all kinds of products that are not very helpful and can actually get you in trouble, but make you feel like there's something you can do to kind of educate judges or attack the system. But that is, I think, very misleading and harmful to people. And it also puts people in a mindset of defeatism, that there's nothing I can do about it. The system's biased, the system's corrupt. And it's disempowering because it doesn't teach you the skills that you need to learn. Basically, the art of persuasion using your own timeline as well as case law to make a very effective argument. And I think being an educator, and I loved teaching the art of persuasion with my 10th and 11th grade students, especially in terms of writing and speaking. And
Yeah.
I've taken those same skills and use them with our clients, many of whom are lawyers themselves, mental health professionals like doctors, nurses, other teachers, creatives, entrepreneurs, because they have not been in family court before and they can't believe that this is how it operates. But you can learn things like what matters and why. And I think when things start making sense to people, they feel a lot more in control of what they can do to protect themselves and their families and their children. And so along the way, you can save a lot of time and money and energy, but it's really ignorance that I think is the biggest problem and making people feel like there's nothing you can do and all you do is go around like complaining and that helps no one. So I think that's the biggest problem that we see, one of the biggest problems that we see. Ignorance and a feeling of disempowerment. Like, oh, the system's rigged, there's nothing I can do about it. Of course, there's if you go in like that, you're going to lose your case.
You're gonna lose. Yeah. Now, there's no real requirements for lawyers and judges to be educated in domestic violence, is there?
Right. No.
So you have some people out there, I don't know, they just if you're looking for real motivation, real grit, and real life resilience, you need to hear the story of U.S. Marine and author Jay Setchell. Jay Setchell is the author of the powerful and inspiring book, The Strength Within You. It's Always Too Soon to Quit. His message isn't built on theory or hype. It's built on a lifetime of facing challenges head on and refusing to back down. As a United States Marine, Jay learned early what it truly means to commit, endure, and overcome. Those lessons followed him far beyond his military service and into every challenge life placed in his path. Through injuries, setbacks, and moments that would have broken many people, Jay held onto one unshakable belief. Quitting was never an option. Not once did he ever think of quitting any challenge in his life. In The Strength Within You, Jay shares how true strength isn't about never failing. It's about standing back up every time. He reminds us that no matter how hard things feel, it is always too soon to quit. His words speak directly to anyone who feels worn down, discouraged, or unsure of their next step. This book is for veterans, athletes, entrepreneurs, parents, and everyday people who want to push through adversity and rediscover their inner strength. Jay's story proves that resilience is a mindset and determination can carry you farther than you ever imagined. If you're ready to be inspired by a Marine who never gave up, never backed down, and never considered quitting, then you need to read The Strength Within You. It's Always Too Soon to Quit, because the strength you're looking for has been inside you all along. The book may be purchased from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, or Kindle formats. Don't know that much about it
Right.
if
So
they've never been through it or experienced it.
right, right. So a lot of judges I mean, if someone's in court for a divorce or post-judgment issue, it's usually an indicator that there's a lot of conflict because like I said, they're always pushing you to work outside of court, and most cases do settle outside of court, sometimes minutes before you walk into the courtroom. Because even if you have an appearance, a lot of times a judge will say, go into a side room and try to work this out. So you get multiple opportunities to do it. So by the time you get before a judge, they usually have some sense of what's going on. But
Yeah,
regardless, whether they do or don't, I remember I was at a conference for Jennifer's Law in Connecticut several years ago, and there was a man there named Evan Stark, who's the author of the book Coercive Control. He's since passed away, a couple of years ago since that conference. But when he was talking, I thought what he was saying was so interesting because he said, and I agree with this, that to change the system, it's not a top-down approach. I mean, certainly judges could do better being educated in coercive control and domestic violence, but he felt that the responsibility is really on the individual parties to to create compelling cases that are persuasive, that educate people through what we're dealing with. And so a lot of what we do with our own clients is to use the art of not just persuasion, but the art of storytelling. Again, everything has to be done very strategically to connect it to what matters to the court, what motion is being filed. It has to be really tight and succinct, knowing that time is so important and you don't want to waste the court's, we always say, valuable time and or resources. So
right.
putting together a very compelling, powerful narrative is going to matter. And all of those years that I was in court with multiple judges, I was able to get great orders again and again. My problem was enforcement. So I persuaded judges to do what I needed them to do. It just took so long because they
Yeah.
kept saying, go, try again, try again, try again. It was like, oh my gosh.
And
But
they're just giving the perpetrator more time.
right.
Yeah.
And then that
Yeah.
emboldens someone
Well,
to
there's no
take advantage of.
consequences if, you know, Horseman.
Yeah, it's one of the worst thing that's something that a lot of lawyers say is the most frustrating thing. That and the lack of civility, which of course is reflective of our society.
Oh yeah, definitely. Become more coarser. What now? Let's talk a little bit about narcissistic abusers. What are some early red flags or patterns of behavior of narcissistic abusers you hope readers of the book will learn to recognize?
So, I mean, for the relationship itself, it's very hard to tell. I We could talk about a little boundary test on a first date, but I tend to see more with once someone has been in the relationship for a while, what are some of the signs that they're gonna have a very difficult separation? So that's where I really focus on the narcissistic behavior. Should we talk about that, or do you want me to talk about early in the relationship?
How about both,
Okay.
briefly? Yeah.
All right. So there's narcissism, and I am not a mental health professional and I don't diagnose anyone. What I pay attention to, what we do, Chris and I, is we focus on people's patterns of behavior over time and the impact it has on the relationship with you, and if you have children, on the relationship with your children as well. So at the very beginning, because narcissism and personality disorders are there's such a wide spectrum. I mean, my ex and Chris's ex, very different, but come from the same, I don't know, same issue,
Same
different
mold.
behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
My ex was like a hidden, his behavior was very hidden. So he did something called, I found out later, lying by omission. Like I said, he had this secret life. I discovered that on our honeymoon, and this was during the divorce process, the discovery process, that he had been soliciting other women while we were on our honeymoon. He was writing personal ads to be published in this place called the Village Voice, which doesn't exist anymore. It's like, so people who have that issue want constant what's called narcissistic supply. They need to feel desired all the time, and they're often always seeking other people to fulfill what I think of as like this dark hole inside themselves. But
Yeah.
my ex was not loud or showy or full of himself. He just felt entitled in the sense of like, oh, well, even though I'm married, I can just do whatever I want and nothing's going to happen to me until he's discovered and then is upset with me for wanting to end the relationship. So, as someone who has a sense of entitlement that they can just do whatever they want, it's hard to see in the beginning because there is such a wide range. But one thing that we think about at the very beginning of a relationship with someone is you can do what's called a boundary test. So let's say you go on a first date with someone, and what you might want to do is, even if you're getting along, make some excuse to leave. Or you can say, I know we have plans for Friday, but I can't go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, I can't go. And look at their reaction. Do they accept no? Or do they get angry? Do they blame you? If you say you're not feeling well and they say, "Oh, well, I'll come over, I'll bring you flour," like, that's not accepting the no either. So somebody that's pushy and trying to make you feel almost guilty, if they're texting you all the time and you don't answer right away, what's their response to you not doing exactly what they want? That's usually a signal, like, pay attention to your gut. If you feel, like, obligated to take care of someone else's needs, that's usually a good sign that something is a bit off at
Yeah.
the very beginning.
Don't go
Now,
near that. Don't go near that guy.
yeah, but it's very hard because you're
Yeah.
dealing with people who are master manipulators, many of
Oh
them
yeah.
practicing since adolescence. So there's no surefire thing. A lot of it is really about paying attention to your gut. If you just feel like something is a little bit off, or you don't
Yeah.
feels a little insincere, or you feel like you're doing like you kind of have to do something to keep them happy,
Yeah.
just pay attention to that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. So
You're
now should
supposed
we
to.
talk about the end?
Pardon?
The end of a relationship, the signals that it could
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Go
difficult, it's
ahead.
worse? Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, yeah, so with that attorney that I told you about, his name happens to be Eric Posmentier. I told you that he knew within minutes of our consult, our first meeting, that mine was gonna be a really bad divorce, and he was right. And so later, And we became very good friends that year, of course, because we spent so much time together. So at the end of that year, I said, Eric, I want to interview you. And this is as I was thinking about doing the book. I want to know, what were the reasons? How did you know that mine was going to be bad? Because I didn't know at all. And
Yeah.
he said, okay, there's a few things. He didn't have an organized list. We just kind of brainstormed what he had learned over at least 2 decades of practicing. And
Yeah.
one of the things he said was, when someone has a personality disorder and or an active addiction, their judgment is impaired. So they're not even doing what's in their own best interest. They're just thinking about short-term consequences, not long-term impact on themselves, you, their kids, the family, the money situation. So it's very, very difficult to deal with someone like that, and they will make the process very, very difficult, as I experience, as all of our clients experience. The other thing that really stands out in cases like these is a sense of entitlement, like we mentioned, but with money. So there's something called the process of discovery during most divorces, where you basically financially undress and you show what you have in your bank statements and your credit card statements and your income and all of that, so that you can come together, whether you do it yourselves or with a mediator or with your lawyers, and you decide what is equitable. And I'm not saying what's equal, but what deals can be made so that everything is here, it's laid out, we can see it, full transparency. But when you're dealing with a high conflict ex, they feel entitled to not share. And this quote I always think of when people like that is, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too. So they feel like, I don't have to share my information. I'm not going to tell you. And so that can get very frustrating and super expensive to go chasing after financial documents with
Yeah.
someone who says, I don't have any money, I lost my job, I didn't, you have to just believe me. You already know. And in the relationship, you haven't had access to full amounts of, to knowing what the full amounts of your assets are. And so that those couple, I mean, there's several factors, but those are the top two things. Is when someone does not cooperate with financial discovery because they feel like they shouldn't have to. It's
Yeah,
their
they think they're
and their
entitled.
asset. Yeah,
Yeah.
really aggravating.
Is there a misconception in the public's eyes about leaving abusive or toxic relationships that you feel strongly about correcting?
Yeah. So there's a bunch. But I think that I'm just gonna say what it feels like for someone who's been in one of these relationships. Just know that the pe th these this type of relationship happens on average to 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men in their lifetimes. That's a huge amount of the population.
Yeah.
And most people, 1 out of 2 people in abusive relationships don't even realize that it's abusive because it's a very slow process usually, and you don't even realize what's happening until it's so bad and you're just like, "How is this my life now? I've completely lost my sense of who I am. I've lost
So
my
it
center."
it just creeps up.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
by the time it happens, there's all kinds of shame because also remember that part of domestic violence is isolating someone from a support system, from their friends. And so you feel like many times you don't have people to talk to. And if you open up to them, they will make very judgmental statements like, "Why did you stay so long?" Having an
Mhm. Yeah,
idea of
right,
that,
right.
that is very, very hurtful. And the people that we work with tend to be very highly educated, super successful professionals. And so there's this added level of shame because these are the role models. Many of them work in mental health or the domestic violence space, or like I said, lawyers. And so people think, well, how could you have been so stupid
Right.
to fall for someone like that? Again, they're not stupid. We're not stupid. It's that we were targeted by someone who, like I said, is a master manipulator as well as a parasite, because people like that are drawn to what we call shining stars. They are drawn to the most successful, kind, empathic, creative, amazing individuals because they make a parasite look good. They're also known as energy vampires. So they only want someone who's amazing. They're not drawn to people that are losers. They want the best. So what's the irony is that many victims or survivors of these kinds of relationships are beating themselves up going, how could I have fallen for this person? I should have known better. But it's really the opposite. You should be patting yourself on the back going, well, I was one of the chosen ones. Yeah, it worked out poorly, but
Yeah,
there was something in me that was valuable enough for somebody to want to take away. So I think trying to have a little better understanding of what domestic violence is. It's
yeah,
not that people are stupid, it's that it affects way more people than you could ever imagine, and it especially affects people who have this appearance that their life is perfect. My town in Connecticut is, like, really wealthy, and there's lots of successful people living here, and everybody thinks it's amazing. Domestic violence is the top crime in this
wow,
town. Over
wow,
everything else, over burglary, domestic violence. And it's also one of the most dangerous situations for the police because when you walk into someone's home, you don't know what to expect.
right,
It's very, very
right.
scary for police
That's
officers.
yeah, I had no idea it was that prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for those in our audience out there feeling stuck or afraid, what is the first step you recommend toward reclaiming control of their lives?
So I think it's really telling somebody what's going on. Like I said, there's all this shame and isolation. And one resource that I wish I had known about was my local domestic violence center. Like I said, I had this image of battered women. And even though my relationship did get physically abusive at the very end, I never would have considered the domestic violence center as a resource for me. And it was only a year at least after our divorce had been finalized, when my ex was parking outside our house and coming up and hand delivering things to the mailbox, which made me very, very uncomfortable. And I asked a police officer who had retired down the street, like, do you think that there's anything to worry about? He said, absolutely. This guy has no reason to be there. He's got nothing to lose. He lives in another state. At the time, he wasn't seeing the kids. So it was like, why is he parking outside your house? And so they sent the police over, and I thought, this is so ridiculous. This is so unnecessary. The police have a partnership with the local domestic violence center, and they did something called a LAP screening, like a lethal assessment screening, where they ask a few questions to determine has the level of danger, the level of risk for the person that they're interviewing. And they found based on my answers that I was at the highest level of risk. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And so when they determine something like that, they kind of they don't force you, but they highly recommend and they stand there while you're doing it that they have the phone right there and they have you call the domestic violence center and make an appointment while they're there at your house. And so that was the
So you
beginning.
do it. So you
I
actually
yes,
do
you
it.
did it. So I did
Yeah.
it. So I made the appointment and I went in and I kept thinking, "Oh, this is, I don't even know why I'm having to do this." And it just blew open my world because that's when I finally started learning what exactly was going on. There's free counseling resources. They do safety planning. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of free resources and help that someone can get from a domestic violence center. A lot of times they have lawyers, they won't necessarily take on your case, but they could give limited legal advice. Some places will help you fill out forms to do restraining orders. I mean, it's just invaluable. So I would highly recommend that anyone in this situation starts by contacting their local domestic violence center and making what's called a safety plan or an exit plan if they're still in the relationship. And you want to make two. One is long-term safety planning, where if you have the time, you gather the financials, you get all your stuff together. And the second is an emergency plan. If something happens, it's almost like you're having a baby. Like, do you have your bag packed? And if you have to leave early, you
Yeah.
make sure your car is parked with the outside facing front. You don't wear scarves or jewelry around your neck because that's often used to strangle and can also be lethal. So you want to make sure all these little details that you might not consider, they can help you think of for free.
Great advice. Great advice for people out there.
Yeah.
Now, what message do you hope professionals such as lawyers, judges, therapists learn from the stories that you had written in your book?
I think, Chris and I have actually trained lawyers a bit in coercive control, and we like to put it under the guise for lawyers of, if you wanna get more clients or retain your clients, here's some things you might wanna know. I think a lot of times lawyers and professionals get caught up in the financials and all of what the planning of what has to happen without having the bedside manner for our clients who often change attorneys because they feel like they're not heard or taken care of. They need a little bit of extra just humanity, just to
Yeah,
say something like, "I'm so sorry that you're experiencing that," like to pause and listen more rather than saying, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do."
yeah.
Another thing is that many people coming out of these relationships, their sense of agency.
A warm cup in your hands, a quiet pause in a busy day, a conversation that lingers long after it ends. That's exactly where the book High on Life by Lori Kleiner Eckert invites you to begin. In High on Life, Lori Kleiner Eckert blends heartfelt storytelling, thoughtful reflections, and everyday wisdom into a beautifully grounded reading experience. Just like sharing a cup of chai, this book encourages you to slow down, breathe, and truly savor life, one moment at a time. This isn't a book about having all the answers, it's a book about asking the right questions. Through relatable stories and gentle insights, Laurie explores themes of connection, resilience, gratitude, and self discovery. Each chapter feels like a quiet conversation with a trusted friend, honest, comforting, and deeply human. Whether you're navigating change, seeking balance, or simply craving a moment of calm in a noisy world, High on Life meets you right where you are. It reminds us that life doesn't have to be rushed to be meaningful, and that reflection can be a powerful act of self care. This book is perfect for readers who enjoy personal essays and reflective storytelling, anyone looking to reconnect with themselves in the present moment, fans of mindful living, personal growth, and soulful conversations. So the next time you pour yourself a cup of tea, coffee, or chai, consider pairing it with a book that nourishes more than just the mind. High on Life by Laurie Kleiner Eckert is more than a book. It's an invitation to pause, reflect, and rediscover the beauty in everyday life. Pick up your copy today and start your own conversation with life, one sip, one page, and one moment at a time. Available from Amazon.
Has been taken away. They've been living in a situation where the there's such a difference in the power dynamic where they've given their authority to this other person, and often they come out of the relationship, they cannot make a decision. It's very, very hard. They can't even order off a menu. Again, the most successful people are like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know what to do."
because they
And
were
so
so
lawyers.
dependent on that
Right,
other person. Yeah,
right. So lawyers, we say that many times people in these situations repeat that same unhealthy relationship cycle because they'll hire a lawyer and say, "Okay, I'm gonna pay you $30,000 now, you're gonna save my life." It's the same thing, like you're giving your authority to somebody else and you're a vulnerable target.
right.
So, lawyers, I think, should really do a bit more of a collaborative approach with their clients. I mean, we say we know our cases and our lives better than anyone. So that has to be part of the discussion about the proper ways to move forward. Certainly, lawyers know the law, but their job is to really translate your case into the law, not to make decisions for you, to help you make informed decisions. And that should include your informed consent, which means that you really need to understand and lawyers really need to communicate the options that someone has and to not be so impatient and to also understand that these cases tend to not be logical, which is very difficult for lawyers. That's why these cases fatigue lawyers because they're trained in logic and logic doesn't work with somebody who is an active addict or has a personality disorder. So to come in very aggressive and attacking and blaming is only going to hurt the family long term. So I wish that lawyers were a little more skilled. A lot of them are in trying to do alternative dispute resolution outside of court. because the impact that this has on families when you have these really crazy cases, that bleeds onto the children. And it's
Yeah.
not just during the war, it's after.
Yeah.
So to really have mental health professionals involved, to get some family systems therapists, to get collaborative divorce professionals involved, to keep the power in the hands of the family as much as possible with assistance, but to not let it blow up in the legal system where people are bleeding money, suffering, and kids are their college education funds are being spent to fund lawyers' children's educations instead, and they feel like they have no choice.
Yeah. Now, support networks can be life-changing. Who or what played the biggest role in your ability to move forward, in your case?
In my own case, so I luckily, I mean, my dad was super helpful, my partner Chris was really helpful. I, like many people in this situation, didn't wanna tell anybody in those last couple of years while I was planning my exit because in my mind, I thought, "I'll do anything to keep this marriage together." My ex said, "If you divorce me, you're gonna ruin our children's lives," and that was the last thing I wanted, and that's what kept me in the relationship for so long because I really believed that not having an intact family would destroy everybody, especially the kids, and I was wrong. And now I've completely changed. I think it's worse to stay in one of those relationships because 'cause you're modeling that that's normal to
Yeah.
your children.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so other support, I did tell 3 really close friends, but they didn't give me the best advice because they also didn't understand what I was dealing with. They tried, but nobody really had a clue because they were thinking, "Oh, this is probably a normal divorce, but this is a little bit crazy situation." But I had a trauma therapist for a while. She was helpful. And then when I finally spoke to my family about it, and I don't even remember, but I felt like I started getting more help and going to therapy. And actually, one of the most helpful things was I had a sports injury and I had to get physical therapy and ended up in a gym for the first time in my life. And there was this awesome hip hop dance class with really loud music. It was like kickboxing. It's called Turbo Sweat, and I was like, "I just need to move my body to, like, super loud music and not think about anything." And that was a big part of getting me through it, especially for
Wow.
that first year. Just all that loud music. I didn't talk to anybody in the class for 9 months, and then they became really close. We had a great community of friends after, but I just needed to physically get those hormones going, get rid of the stress hormones of cortisol and getting the pleasure hormones going to just get
Yeah.
through. So that was really, really helpful.
What has been the most rewarding feedback you've received from readers of the book, Been There, Got Out?
Well, I mean, we get feedback all the time about the book, but more so from people on our social media feed, people who listen to the podcast, and especially our clients. So they're constantly writing in like, "Oh my God, you've saved my life. Like, I can't believe this works. This is amazing."
Yeah.
We've gotten stuff from people's parents saying, "Thank you for saving my child and my grandchildren and like stopping this cycle of intergenerational trauma." But it is just so rewarding. I mean, I can't even think of like general stuff because it happens all the time. We have a little section. We have a monthly newsletter and there's a little section in it called From Puddle to Ninja. And every time we hear something, I try to either take it from the emails we get or during our weekly legal abuse support group. When clients tell us about little victories or progress they've made, we actually have a little symbol. It's one of those floating tube men that you usually see outside a used car
Oh,
place.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
our victory symbol. And so as they get the little waving balloon guy, we write down their successes. But I think one of our big ones from a few years ago was we had a client who was Native American. She had had horrible things happen to her. Ex used to throw bottles at her face on top of all kinds of other abuse. And when we met, she had been out for a couple of years and he hadn't paid child support. And she was a special education teacher, and she's like, I wonder if I could go to court and represent myself. And we said, why not? Like, you have nothing to lose. Why don't you just try it? And you have skills from teaching.
Yeah.
So let's put together some stuff. So she was amazing. I mean, she made this awesome binder and got ready. She went in. The judge was so impressed with what she had done. I still remember she had columns with like the case law, like the case that related to her particular issue. Her documentation was perfect. And the judge said, "Can I have your binder? Because I'm going to use it. Like this is amazing." So she ended up winning that case. Then she went back and got a couple of restraining orders for herself and her family. And after that, she decided to go to law school. And so now she's in law school and she's part of only 2% of lawyers in this country that are Native American women,
Uh,
and she's serving her community. So that was just incredible. That's one of our big success stories, and we got to meet her in person when we went to California with the first book when we went on tour. So that was just amazing.
what advances in technology, such as apps, are now being utilized for communication purposes?
So there's a lot of AI apps that we actually are not thrilled with because people don't understand that AI is a tool, but it
Yeah.
doesn't fix the root problem. So we actually have a course, it's called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind. And we do what we call strategic communication more than anything with everybody. The problem with some of these AI things when you're dealing with someone with a personality disorder and or addiction is it triggers them. So being reasonable or sounding really neutral does not work with everybody, especially people like our exes. And so people end up using AI and it just makes things worse. And on top of that, it doesn't take care of the root PTSD. Most people freak out when they hear from their ex or they get really, really scared, even years post divorce. The communication stuff drives them crazy. Their stomach hurts, their throat hurts. It's like they get terrified, literally terrified. We have
Completely
people,
triggered. They're
yeah,
triggered.
8
Yeah.
years, 10 years after separation, they're like, every time they hear a ding, a notification from their ex. So AI is not going to fix it. What's gonna fix it is learning how to deal with the bully and, again, educating yourself or getting educated from other people like what we do into learning how these people communicate and why and what their strategies are and how you can respond, and it completely turns the power dynamic around. So we tell our clients, like, we don't want you using AI. We actually have a client who developed one of those co-parenting apps who often uses us for help in communication, ironically.
Okay, that's good to
So
know.
again, AI is a tool, but we don't think it can be a little bit helpful, but it usually almost all the time when people send us drafts, because that's part of what we do. We have something called a permission slip plan as one of our client perks. We'll say, once we teach you strategic communication, you can send us drafts of what you think you want to say, and we will proofread and edit them for you because we want you to have something called clean hands. And we're very conscious of the invisible audience of the court, the judge, mediator, custody evaluator, et cetera. And we want you to be perfect. And so that way they don't have the burden of being like, am I saying it right? Am I doing it right? So we do it and then they learn to do it themselves. And so every time someone is using AI, we're just like, no, 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 no. We got to shorten it. We got to not get this involved, and this doesn't work. And when they use, and sometimes people are using AI back and forth with each other. It's like you're not getting anything done. It also misses the opportunity to have one of the best exhibits, like real actual communication between you and your ex. So learning
Yeah.
to deal with your ex is something that's an important skill, and I don't like the AI and co-parenting communication that does it for you.
So, looking ahead, what new projects, programs, or advocacy work are you excited about?
So the book coming out, When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, I am really excited about. I'm thrilled. I've spent the last couple of years really diving deeply into this topic of parental alienation or abuse by proxy. It's also called poisoning the well. And it is one of the most common issues in our community. And so I've met so many fascinating professionals who are able to help people dealing with this. This affects 22 million divorced parents in America and Canada alone. It's a worldwide epidemic. It's something a lot of people don't talk about, and so many people are suffering. And so I'm really, really excited to have the book coming out. And we also are doing this humongous course that I keep expanding because I'm like, oh, I thought of something else, or oh, we just did another interview that goes along with the book. It's going to be at least, I don't know, 20 hours long. I think we're going to do it as almost a 12-step program, like a 16-step program. You can come in anytime. There's going to be group coaching. There's individual modules about how to handle this issue in the legal system effectively, but especially outside of the legal system, because this is something, again, when kids turn 18, it doesn't end everything. Legal stuff ends, but you still have the rest of your lives. And
But that
your
emotional
child,
stuff doesn't end.
no.
And if a parent turns a child against, one of the other parents, it can go on forever.
Yeah, and it affects their ability to attach to others. It affects everything.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So, it's
Uh,
really
I
important.
was going to ask you, so for people listening to this in all over the country, because the podcast goes everywhere in Canada, how can people contact you? Can you help people all over? So you're
Yep.
not limited to any one state.
No, we're not geographically limited at all. I always say the laws are different, but the issues are the same. We have clients in Africa, Australia, Europe, Canada, all over America. I'm probably forgetting some places.
Okay.
Asia, India,
Yeah,
um,
we have a
men,
lot of listeners
women.
in Europe,
Yeah, yeah. So
Brazil.
yep, yep. So, yeah, we're not geographically limited. It was super easy to reach, just beentheregotout.com. We're also on social media. Instagram's my home base. It's at been there got out with little underscores. The books are called Been There Got Out. The podcast has Been There Got Out. The YouTube channel's Been There Got Out. My email is lisa at beentheregotout.com, but super easy to reach.
Okay. Can you email me all those contacts? I'll put
Yes.
them in the podcast notes
Yep.
so people have it. I appreciate it. Lisa, what message would you like to leave our listeners or viewers who are currently in situations like you were once having to face? What would you like to leave them? What
It
message?
it is really, really scary to ever, I know it was for me, to ever think that leaving this relationship is gonna be something better, because many people think, "Well, this is the best I can do. I'm too old. I'm not good looking anymore. No one's gonna want me." That's something your partner's probably convinced you that this is the best you're gonna do, and I can promise you that is not true. That even if you don't find the love of your life, which I actually did after, who's the male half of Been There Got Out, even if you don't find the best career of your life, which is what happened to me, which I never expected either, you don't deserve somebody, you shouldn't be with somebody who is disrespectful and making you feel like nothing.
Yeah.
It's better to be on your own, but there are so many people out there that, if given the chance, could love you and treat you better, and you have a much better chance at happiness. Like, it's terrifying. I know it feels like it's never gonna get better. I lived with that for those couple of years. I had a physical, it felt like a physical ball of pain in my stomach every single day. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was gonna die. And I know other people can relate to that, but once I finally made the decision, and it took a long time to make that decision, and it takes an average of 7 to 9 times to get out of something like this, the air is so much cleaner on the other side. Life gets so much better just by getting rid of that poison,
Mm,
that
yeah.
bully. So,
Yeah.
it is really scary, but it's better for you, it's better to go. It's way better for your kids to model a healthy relationship, whether it's romantic or just your friendship. You only have one life. Isn't it worth trying to find some joy and happiness instead of being
Absolutely.
tied to someone who's just dragging you down?
Yeah. Excellent advice. I want to thank you, Lisa, for being on the podcast and putting this topic in the spotlight today. We could talk much more about it, but due to time constraints, that's why I recommend to those out there listening or viewing on YouTube to pick up a copy of the book, which I read and found beautifully written to not only hold your attention, but also there is much great information in there for people needing this kind of help. And once again, if you want for our YouTube audience, you have the book there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lift it up and in there, got
This
out.
this is the first one,
Okay, we're
and the
gonna
next
have
one
all this in
is
the podcast notes.
yeah, the next one will say, "Been there, got out, when your ex turns the kids against you," and
Yeah,
that's gonna be out in March 18th, 2026.
2020. Oh, so it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming yeah, it's in 2 months.
Okay, well, once again, thank you. And for those out there listening or viewing, comments and suggestions, email me at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. Facebook group is It's a Rap with Rap. We have about 2,000 or so people. If you want to
Wow.
join, it's a private group. Please email me. Instagram is at It's a Rap with Rap podcast. We're on X at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. We're on most social media platforms, and YouTube is It's a Rap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I would like everybody to please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap. The podcast is so happy and proud to have Blue Sky CBD as one of our sponsors and supporters. At Blue Sky CBD, they know that the highest quality CBD starts from the seed. Blue Sky partners with sustainable, responsible farms for superior hemp plants to extract their CBD and other healthful phytonutrients. Each of Blue Sky's products contain high concentrations of CBD for maximum impact, and Blue Sky offers some of the lowest cost per milligram CBD on the market. All Blue Sky's products are THC free and are tested by a third party laboratory for potency and purity. All this has made Blue Sky one of the only CBD brands trusted by healthcare professionals across the United States. As the demand for CBD and its therapeutic potential have grown rapidly worldwide, it is difficult to know which products you can trust. At Blue Sky CBD, they just don't sell their products, they use their products. Blue Sky CBD proudly shares testimonials of their loved ones who use these products. Blue Sky CBD guarantees the potency and purity of each and every product they sell. Blue Sky tests their products 3 times. First, the plant is tested, next, the isolate, and last, the final product to ensure each product batch meets Blue Sky's high standards. A copy of their certificate of analysis is linked below each product description online. The Blue Sky CBD website contains client testimonials, including a case study for each testimonial from the people just like you regarding people dealing with severe anxiety and insomnia, high blood pressure, pain management, headache, rheumatoid arthritis and spondylitis, and endocrine balance. Blue Sky even makes the product Pet Love for our canine and feline family members. Blue Sky CBD uses CBD derived from hemp that is THC free, which is drug free and can be sold everywhere legally in the United States. Blue Sky CBD wants you to feel confident with your purchase and offers you excellent customer service. If you are not satisfied with their products, you may request a refund of the full purchase price within 30 days of the product received date. When ordering, please use the podcast link to receive 20% off your initial purchase. The link and website information will be listed in the podcast notes.